cheers. Here's Siddle. Oh, the ball is close. He's given him. He's given him. Peter Siddle's got a hat-trick on his birthday.
All right, welcome back to the On the Ball podcast. This is episode 34. I remembered this time. We are once again joined by Pilch and Rowey. Welcome, boys.
Thanks, mate.
G'day, mate.
Yeah, so we're back again to do, well, if you listened to the last episode, you probably noticed we only did half the competition, so we're here to finish the job off. We've got 9 teams left to review their first month, well, the month post-lock, well, we can't, past lockdown version 1. So, yeah, I don't really think there's too much to talk about going to it. I just want to say, I feel like I didn't really say this enough in the last one. I'd like to obviously thank Rowey and Pilch for joining me, but I'd like to a big thanks to the people who've sent in their opinions in this episode. I think we have 4 or 5, so I appreciate it a lot. I know it's not too difficult to just film yourself chatting about the team you support, but it does take a bit of time out of your day, and some people aren't the most comfortable doing it, so we appreciate it. So yeah, we'll just get in straight into it. Obviously, if you listen to the last episode, the order was a bit baked, so we'll be having a weird order once again. So we are starting with Carlton, and for Carlton, he's appeared on the show before. We have Jack Broadbent. Broadie's going to tell us what he thinks of the Carlton Footy Club's month. So let's hand it over to Broadie.
So here's my review of Carlton over the last 4 rounds. The Blues have been 2-2 over the last 4 rounds and find themselves in 12th after the first 5 rounds of the season, which I'd say is about a par mark for the Blues if you're looking at the expectations coming into the season. Probably out of 10, I know I'm a biased supporter, but I'd say probably a 7 out of 10 has been our last 4 rounds. We started off in round 2, the first game back post the shutdown of the season, and lost to Melbourne by, I think it was 1 or 2 points. Carlton probably should have won that game in the end. We got killed at the start, then came home really strong, and lost by under a goal in the end. So some inaccurate kicking cost us. So that was a game that loss hurt us in particular. But then the next week we rebounded really strongly and beat the Cats down at Geelong, which is an unbelievable win, a real confidence-lifting, boosting win for the side, and a lot of the young players stood up. Eddie Betts, Cripper, Doherty, they were all fantastic in that game. And so were the key forwards. The forward line functioned the best it has in years for Carlton. So that was an amazing win. Once again, we got off to the fast start this time, unlike the other games. And Geelong clawed their way back in the last quarter and nearly took it, but we managed to hang on, which was a great victory for the Blues. So that made us 1-2 after 3 rounds. And then next week against the arch rival, the Bombers, we got a 1-point victory. Jacob Townsend had a shot in the last minute and came up short by a couple metres, which meant that the Blues won. In that game, some of the lesser lights, some of the young players stood up, such as Setterfield. Cunningham had his best game for the club, and Levi Casbolt continued his strong form, as well as Gibbons. So that was a really good victory for the club, put us 2-2, and for the first time in a while, we felt relevant in a season. And then the last game we played was against the Saints on Thursday night, which was a tough loss for us. We started really slow. Our first quarter has been a problem, and the Saints had too much pressure for the Blues. We didn't come out firing. So that was a disappointing result. But if you told me at the start of the continuation of the season, the last 4 rounds, that we'd be 2-2, I would have taken that as a supporter. Didn't expect to beat Geelong. Probably should have beaten Melbourne in hindsight, looking at the way they've performed. But overall, it's been continued growth from the football club, and we're starting to go in the right direction. I think the MVP, or the best player over those 4 rounds, has been the Doc. Every game he's been pretty consistent. Got tagged a little bit by Geary against St Kilda and struggled, but moved on to the wing in the second half and played well. But his transition back into the side has been seamless. He's been really impressive across half-back and just given us a bit of a general down there with his elite ball use and the way he can organise the defence. So he's been super. So yeah, hopefully the Blues can. We play the Dogs and Port the next 2 weeks. They've moved up to the Gold Coast hub, and hopefully we can get a win out of those next two and keep us in the season. I feel if we lose the next two, we sort of lose hope and the young players will stop believing. But yeah, I think that would be really good if we get one win.
Thanks for that, Broadbent. I know he's down in Lawn at the moment, so appreciate taking time out of your holiday. Yeah, so what did you think of Carlton's month, Rowey?
Yeah, I mean 2-2. Carlton fans would probably take that. I think they do need a bit more growth. Broady said they are seeing growth, and they are, but I think it's coming to the time where they need to see more. They need some of those sort of mid-level players to fire. Like we obviously saw Cunningham in that game against the Bombers. I think that was the first time in a while you've seen one of their sort of mid-range, sort of fringe players have a breakout game. I think he had nearly high 20 touches, and obviously has some great speed. The problems are the losses; they're pretty lackluster. It's just lots of the time you see lots of belief just get sapped from the younger players, which fans probably saw against the Saints most recently. But all in all, yeah, it's been all right for the Blues, I think. They do need to see some more growth. But the one major issue, most notably against the Saints, was their three tall forwards. McGovern and Mackay and Casbolt, 0 goals, 0 between them, 14 touches and 6 marks, beaten by an okay Saints defence. And that does need to improve. I think that's sort of gone under the radar for them a bit as a potential flaw. But all in all, it's been okay, but they obviously still have lots of areas to improve.
Pilch, what do you think?
Yeah, look, I think Blues supporters can be pretty satisfied with where they're at the moment. Obviously, I reckon they were unlucky not to beat Melbourne, and then 2 great wins over Geelong and Essendon, just holding on in both. Obviously, outplayed by the Saints, but yeah, some of the fringe players, as Rowey and Broady was saying, are starting to help out Cripper a bit more this season. Last season, he was sort of just carrying them week in, week out. And obviously, we're not going to see Carlton play super consistent footy this year, but I think they're doing all right so far. Definite pass mark.
Yeah, they're a tough one to judge almost, because if you look at it in the grand scheme of things, they probably should be better than what they are at the moment. But if you just compare it relative to the last couple of seasons, well then, yeah, you're probably taking it as a Carlton fan. But if you had to rate it out of 10, Pilch, what would you go?
Well, actually, I think their list for me isn't really quite there yet, and I think no one really expected them to push for the 8. So I certainly didn't. So I've actually given them an 8 out of 10 because I think their supporters can be quite pleased with what they've seen so far, and they have shown some good footy and good promise.
Rowey?
I'm going to be a bit harsh. I'm going to go 6.5. I think those losses are still they're not really honourable. They're just sort of, like I said, they sort of sap the feeling out of the younger players, sap the belief out of them. I think those losses, they need to be a lot more hard fought by them. The Saints game was sort of lost early in the game, and the only way they were going to come out with a bit of dignity was to close the gap, which they sort of did at the end. But yeah, I'm going to say 6.5.
Yeah, and if you had to give someone the MVP, Rowey, who would you award it to?
Probably Doherty. Has a little bit of an edge over Cripps, just because he's had an outstanding start to the year.
Pilch?
Yeah, same with me, mate. Doherty, he's been unreal in his return. He was the game he had against the Bombers. If they didn't have Doherty, they would have lost that game for sure. So I think he's been the most impactful player.
Yeah, fair enough. And yeah, once again, thanks for that, Broadbent. Now we move on to Collingwood. Unfortunately, I did have a Collingwood fan lined up in Tom Bain, friend of the show, but in a quite unusual circumstance, he has concussed himself, and he's actually not been in the greatest way the last few days, albeit in a weird situation. So as of now, he hasn't sent it through, and I'm editing it straight away. So unless he magically somehow gets better and fills up to recording it, I don't think we're going to have that in there. So yeah, Rowey, what did you make of Oh, that I feel like that sounds like I'm bagging out Bainey. I'm not. We wish that Bainey gets better fairly quickly because I know he's had his issues with concussion. But yeah, Rowey, what did you think of Collingwood's month?
Boy, definition of a roller coaster. Obviously started off very well against the Saints. That was some of the best performances by a team this whole year. But then just went downhill. It was a gutsy loss against the Giants. Can't really knock them for that. Obviously, Howe went down. He's probably the best player up to that point. But you see, they blew a 31-7 lead and then only scored 5 more points for the game against the Bombers. No goals in 2 quarters, and they just seem to go missing in those type of games. They're first quarter specialists. Stephenson's sort of the poster boy for that. And you just see it's always bits of plays in the second, third quarter when the game's really, it's in the thick of things. They just don't have any trust in their kicking, no trust in their gutsy disposals, the 30-40 linking kicks that really set up the play. They just like to overhandle in those situations. They become too careful, sort of make those comparisons to Geelong a bit. And then obviously with the shocking off-field with the going side on them has not helped. I think just their on-field footy as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they go from here, but not looking great for them at the moment.
If you had to give them a rating out of 10, Roy?
Yeah, look, if it was based on just the Saints game, that was a clear 9-10, but ever since then, I'm going to give them a 4. Hasn't been good for them.
Pilch, what did you think of their month?
Yeah, well, as Rowie said, they started off unbelievably. After 3 rounds, they were, everyone was saying premiership favourites, and it was hard to disagree. But since then, the Giants' loss was stiff. I think they did deserve to win that. But yeah, the Bombers game just didn't cut it, and they've had real concerns over their scoring. A lot of the players in their forward line have been out of form this season. They're defending well, but just not getting it done up there. And now the injury issue with Sidebum and DeGoey's off-field issues as well. It's not looking too good for the Pies at the moment. And
just an FYI to those listening, he knows his name is Sidebottom. We just call him Sidebum. I'm not sure why. Yeah, he's not an idiot. And like that match against Richmond at the time didn't seem too bad because everyone just thought Richmond was like the defending premiers and stuff. But at the end of the month in reflection, it's probably an average result for Collingwood given Richmond's form in the 3 matches following that. So yeah.
Yep. And as Rowie touched on, their last 3 matches, they've come out strong at the start and then just went missing in the Tigers, Giants, and Bombers match that happened. So yeah, I've given them a 5 out of 10 for my rating because they're below expectation easily.
And best player, Pilch?
Best player. This one was a tough one. A lot of their defenders. I mean, I would give it to Howe, but he went down and then missed the last game. And then Maynard and Crisp have been good, but I've gone with Scott Pendlebury. I think he's been back to his best, racking them up, carrying their midfield. So yeah, Pendles for me.
Yeah, Mr. Dependlebury. Rosef, what about you?
Yeah, definitely Pendles. Just his composure and what he's still doing for the footy club at his age at the moment is really what's shining light for them at the moment, the main one. I'll also just clear up the blowing the 31-7 lead was actually against Richmond that I said before, but yeah, definitely Pendles.
Yeah. Off-field rating for them would probably be like a -5. It's not been the greatest couple of weeks for Collingwood, but yeah. Now, before we move on to Essendon, I need a health check on you, Pilch. How are you feeling, mate? I know you've not been feeling too well today.
Yeah, bit under the weather today, mate. Thanks for asking, but it's not COVID, so
Yeah,
we're all good there. It's not exactly a sickness, but
yeah, if you feel like you need to, relieve yourself of some fluids in the stomach, just yell out and we'll take a break.
Yeah, we'll do, mate. Cheers.
Yeah. So now we're moving on to Essendon. We've got another fan for this one. When I was listening to it in the edit for the last episode, when I was saying fan, it sounded like I was saying like fan of the shows, and they'd like sent it in, and I'd chosen them. but it's not that. We were scrambling to find people. So for Essendon, we've got our good mate Noah Berends. He's actually appearing on the next
Nice.
episode. We're doing a Man United Team of the Decade, following our Liverpool one the other week. So he's going to be on that one with Pilch. So look forward to that. So let's see what he thought of the Bombers month.
Hey, so overall, been pretty happy with Essendon's season so far. Got the 3 wins, 1 loss, which was only by a point, and then the postponed game against Melbourne. Although only lost 1 game by a point, I still think we're pretty far from playing our absolute peak. The game against Freo before the lockdown was pretty average against an average side, I'd say, in Freo. And same could probably be said for the Swans game. Although getting the results is important, even though we didn't play that well. The Carlton game lost by a point, especially after the McKenna incident. I think that put us off a bit. But I think we're improving and played a good game against Collingwood. I think definitely our best game so far, and especially with a few players out, missing Merritt and Heppel. So when they come back, hopefully we'll be able to not smash some teams and put in a few more convincing performances. I'd probably give us an 8. We're getting the results, but I'd say we're still pretty a little bit to go before we're playing our absolute best footy.
Thanks for that, Noz. I have to say, I don't know what you boys are going to say, but I think he was pretty generous to the Bombers. I think apart from the Collingwood game, hasn't been too great. Like, they've played 3 pretty bad teams, and they've all been very close, despite being on the end of the win in 2 of them. But what do you make of their month, Pilch?
Yeah, well, I think good mate Noah put it quite well. They haven't played their best footy at all, but they have got the results. Apart from the game against Carlton, where they were woeful in that match and deserved to lose it, despite the McKenna COVID situation. But the game against the Pies last week, that really bolstered their rating for me. They brought out their best footy and quite easily beat the Pies after a slow start to the first quarter. So it may be a bit of recency bias, but I think I like where they're at the moment.
Yeah, Rowey.
Yeah, definitely. I have to agree with Pilch. That win against the Pies, that's really stayed home with me about how I view Essendon. I still think they obviously need to find that consistency like the 2017-19 Richmond, just the week in, week out performances. Obviously, the Pies was great, but then you look at the loss to Carlton. I think Shield is really becoming one of the best players, one of the best midfielders in the comp. Just quietly, I mentioned him as my Smoky All-Australian earlier in the year in the podcast. Obviously, McGrath becoming really consistent and a good pickup for them at pick 1. I think everyone sort of saw that coming. And they found one in Ridley as well. And that was an area in the ground where they probably didn't improve with Hooker and Hurley looking to become one-on-one defenders late in their career. But overall, I think it's been good. I just think that consistency is what they're going to be needing. They've got the young blokes stepping up in the times when it matters, like Ridley and Parrish against the Swans. But in that last quarter, I think he had like 10, 11 touches in that final quarter. So I think the young blokes are looking good for them. I think they still do have a good list. I just think that consistency, if they can nail that, they're going to be, I reckon they will make finals and possibly go deep.
Yeah, so they've gone up to the Gold Coast, and they've got North and the Dogs in the next 2 weeks, which they would probably see as winnable games, and that would have them sitting at 5-1, which could easily be first by that stage, but more likely like second or third, which you'd definitely take given the fact that they've, apart from the Collingwood game, haven't played that well. If you had to rate it out of 10, Rowey, what would you give it?
I'm going to give them an 8. I'm going to agree with Noah. Yeah, I think it's just that consistency that's holding them off that reaching that higher rating. I'll give you MVP. Will probably go to Shield. I just think he's been awesome for them. Sorry if I jumped the gun there, but
No,
yeah, I think he's been awesome for them, and yeah, I think an 8 out of 10 is pretty fair.
Pilch?
Yeah, same with me. I mean, they were 2 meters away from being 4-0, so I've given them an 8 as well, despite a few poor performances, but they still got the job done in those 2 games against the Swannies and Freo. But yeah, Dylan Shield has been an absolute beast. Ridley's been a good addition, and Hooker and Hurley have been good stringer as well. But Dylan Shield has been probably a top 3, top 5 midfielder in the competition so far this year. So, yep, he gets the chockies for me there.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with Noah. I think dealing with that Connor McKenna situation and the week off would have been like quite rocking to the club. So the fact that they've come out of it, they're 3-1, sitting in 5th, ready to launch into that top 4. I think all Essendon fans should be pretty happy with that. Now, next we're rolling on to, so this is where we skip to the actual second half of the teams. We're going to Melbourne. We've got another fan. We have a lot of fans early here, and then we kind of fall away at the end. But we've got Melbourne, the Melbourne Footy Club, the oldest footy club, the oldest current AFL Victorian club, if you saw my Instagram story today. But yeah, we've got Tom Morris, another friend of the show, here to chat about their month.
So Melbourne, after the few weeks off due to Corona, started off really well against the Blues. Probably played the best quarter of footy I've seen them play since 2018 and got my hopes up. Thought maybe they were back to the good old days of 2018, but not really to be. Only just scraped across the line against the Blues, but when you're at the bottom of the ladder, scrapping for the 4 points, you take what you can get. And then obviously had the week off against Essendon due to Connor McKenna doing the positive test, but then it was negative. Not too sure what happened there, but wasn't the worst thing ever. D's couldn't lose that week. And then the games against Geelong and Richmond were pretty stock standard for Melbourne. They were in it for a fair bit, looking really competitive, but then there were just parts of the game that just looked no good. Just nothing was happening, nothing was clicking, just Geelong and Richmond just all over the D's, not getting anywhere near it. I thought at the start of the year that the D's could maybe realistically sneak into the bottom of the 8. But yeah, just all hope of that's gone. Probably try not to get the wooden spoon at this point. So I think everyone can agree that the list as it is probably should be performing a lot better than it is. But just ever since lost Jesse Hogan at the end of 2018, Tommy McDonald just hasn't been his 2018 form. I think he kicked like 60 goals that year, and I'd be surprised if he's kicked 60 since then. And the Weed just hasn't done a hell of a lot. So still just crying out for that key forward that can provide a contest, even if he doesn't mark it, bring it to ground. There's just so many intercept marks inside the D's forward 50. I think most games they'd either win or at least draw with or break even with the inside 50s count. But it just doesn't amount to scores. So yeah, that's probably the main issue I'd say with the D's at the moment. But the standout I'd have to say was Christian Petracca moving into the midfield. It's really taking his game to the next level. I think the pennies finally dropped for him that to perform well at the AFL level, you got to get really fit, and it's crazy how the fitter you are, the more contests you can get to, and the more chance you are of getting your hands on the thing. So, yeah, he's been really impressive. So, in saying that, I reckon I'll give him a 2 out of 10 overall, because the first quarter against Carlton was really good, and patches of the Geelong and Richmond game have been pretty impressive. But I had not high hopes, but I thought that D's at least be a bit more competitive this year than they have been. So, yeah. Pretty disappointing, but, being a D supporter, fairly used to it ever since 2007. So, yeah, it's just part of the D's DNA these days to be down the bottom.
All right, thanks for that, Moz. I won't lie, when he said the weed, I was a bit confused. I thought he meant like Tom McDonald had turned to smoking weed to try and he was saying like the weed hasn't helped him much, like the steroid hasn't helped much or something, but yeah. No, thanks for that, Moz. Pilch, what did you make of Melbourne's last, only 3 matches.
Yeah, look, I feel very sorry for D's fans. They should be so much better than what they are. They were extremely lucky not to be 0-4 right now. They just held on against the Blues. They did all right against Geelong, but very scrappy game. And then on the weekend against the Tigers, their kicking was just absolutely woeful. I've got an absolute vendetta against Clayton Oliver this week. He's one of my favourite inside midfielders in the competition. He racked up 18 Kentucky's, 8 or 9 clearances. But of the 8 kicks he had, I'm pretty sure 6 were clangers, and obviously cost them a chance to score a few times going forward. But yeah, not just him, their whole midfield. And also, their headline midfielders, Oliver, Brayshaw, Viney, you look at their time on grounds each week, and it's like low 70s for all of them. So I'm not sure what's going on there, whether they have fitness issues, tank issues, but I'm not really sure why that is. But yeah, D's have been pretty shocking.
Mate, you can't just say Kentucky's. People to know what you're talking.
The people know what a
I
Kentucky
thought that
is.
was quite a nice little word you made up
Do
there.
you know what a Kentucky is? Well, Rowey probably knows what stat he had 18 in. So, but yeah, it's contested possession for those who don't know. Rowey, what did you think?
Yeah, I think like Moz put it well. They've had one good quarter in 12, and it was the first one. So obviously they nearly choked that. They lack a lot of composure at the moment. The D's. You look at a lot of chances, especially in the weekend against the Tigers. They never, if you analyse the play, you pause whenever they have the ball. They never ever kick to the most appropriate option. The most sensible one. There might be like a quick little handball over the top or like 20, 30 meter kick. But instead, they bomb down the line, intercept mark and all that. They never, if you analyse their play, they never kick to the right, the target or appropriate man. And it's just that lack of composure. And look, no forward line as well, like you touched on. They haven't scored over 54 points this season. So obviously there's a lot of flaws in their game. I think the midfield of, if you exclude Brayshaw, the common midfield of Viney, Petrarca and Oliver, then none of them are known for their kicking. So they lack that one midfielder with poise that can really drive the play forward, like Pendles for Collingwood, for example. Yeah, they're in a bit of a hole of days. There's just not a lot of chemistry. So that doesn't really help with those making the right decisions at times. So yeah, it hasn't looked good for them at the moment in 2020.
Yeah. I know I just said this for Essendon as well, but probably more so for Melbourne because like they weren't at fault for the positive test or false positive or whatever. I do think having a week off would have hurt them as opposed to helping them. Like especially early on in the season when you're trying to get a bit of rhythm going. I don't think a fortnight off would have been too helpful for them. But yeah, fair points from both of you. Pilch, if you had to put a number on it, mate.
Yeah, look, I think Moz had a 2 out of 10. I've given them a 3, but obviously it's not looking good.
Rowey?
I've given them a 3. Mainly because I'm in love with Keziah Pickett. I think he's awesome to watch. There's those high flyers are great. Great to watch every week. But yeah, and the emergence of Petrarca in the midfield. But apart from that, nothing really warranting a 3.
Yeah, I watched them for like 20 minutes on the weekend. In that 20 minutes, he like went up for genuine mark of the year.
Yeah.
I think he got given like unrealistic or something. But yeah,
it's a joke.
Pilch MVP. Who are you going?
Yeah, well, obviously there's not much to choose from here. Petrarca's been a shining light, but it's hard to go past Big Maxi Gawn. He puts the other 21 players on his shoulders week in, week out. Does absolutely everything for them. So, yeah, Big Maxi.
Rowey?
Yep, Gawney as well. He racks up some of the most possessions for them, apart from their inside mid. So he's doing it well, Max. At the moment, Petrarca a close second, but yeah, definitely Maxi.
Out of their midfield group on the weekend, Gawney was the only one that could hit a target by foot, which is just embarrassing.
Yeah. This doesn't happen much in AFL, but Gawney should legit leave. Like he's in the prime. He's in his prime. He's probably the best ruckman in the comp. I don't know where you guys stand on the Grundy versus Gawn situation, but like he's in his prime, one of the best ruckmen, and he's just playing for a team going like bottom three. Like, I'm not really sure what the point is. Even Fife as well. Like, where in like basketball or NFL or something, they would be straight out of there, looking for a premiership or at least some finals footy. Next we've got North. North, what have they been up to? I don't know. North, such a mid team.
Bit of a nothing team.
Look at all North Melbourne fans. Like, they're always just solid every single year. Always just outside the 8. Provide a few upsets. So they've beaten the Giants by 20. Gone down to the Swans. Just lost to the Hawks after the Hawks decided to just choke the last quarter, and they got pumped by the Dogs last weekend. So, what did you make of their month, Pilch?
Yeah, look, really good start to the month by putting away the Giants, and that they were 2-0 at that stage. So I thought, North could be good here. But since then, it's 0-3. They've put up some decent fights, shown glimpses, but not too much to be excited about. A few of their young players are showing some good signs, like Jai Simpkin and players like that. But yeah, look, don't really have too much to add on North, as you said, but I'd say below par.
Rowey?
Yeah, there's never really much to say about North, to be honest. Out of the 5 teams they've played, they've obviously won 2. And the 2 best teams, arguably best teams they've played, they've beaten. So the Giants and the Saints, and obviously lost to the Swans, Hawks, and Dogs. And they were all pretty significant losses. The Dogs was a smashing. Didn't play well there at all. I only watched a bit of it, but you could just tell who that the Dogs were the clear alpha of that game. Yeah, it's just really the emergence. Jai Simpkin, he's been unreal. Taron Thomas continuing to impress. The main shining lights. Apart from that, lots of their players have sort of gone missing. Lots of the plethora of halfback flanks they've got. And obviously Ben Brown's failing to fire a bit. So, yeah, not much else to say on North, but yeah, it's a bit odd beating the best 2 teams they've played and losing to the other 3, but interesting to see how they go for the rest of the season.
Yeah, they've also gone to the Gold Coast, and I don't even know if these teams are going to the Gold Coast or they're just playing at Metricon, but they've got Essendon and Richmond, so on paper pretty tough, but you never know what Richmond are going to be like in the hub. They might turn out to be one of the weaker teams given the amount of people who haven't travelled.
Yeah, same with the Bombers.
If you had to rate them out of 10, Rosef, what rating are you giving them?
Probably a 5, given they have been under par, but given they've beaten the Giants, obviously a quality side, and the Saints in round 1, they're able to come back from that, I think about 5 goals down at half-time. That was obviously a gutsy comeback, so I'll give them 5.
What about MVP, Rowey? Who are you going?
I'm got to give to, at the moment, probably Sean Higgins. Just continues to fire in the midfield. Obviously, Jai Simpkins are close there. But I think just Higgins, just week in, week out, has just been carrying them for a while now. And obviously, because he's a North player, he goes under the radar a bit. But yeah, Higgins definitely.
Pilch, rating an MVP, mate.
Yeah, for the rating, I've given them a 6 out of 10, just because personally I wouldn't have had them making the 8 this year, and they did have that great win against the Giants. And MVP, obviously, as you said, Roy, Simpkins been great. Higgins, bit of a smoky. Higgins has played really well, but whenever he cops a tag, he's just completely out of the game. But the all-round man, Todd Goldstein, has he's arguably been the best ruckman in the competition this year. He leads the entire AFL in clearances. He's racking up like 25 disposals, winning the hitouts. So he's turned his game around, because a couple of years ago, people were saying, oh yeah, Braden Preuss needs to play ahead of him. But he's really returned to the top, back up to his 2015 form, which is good to see because we love him.
The big gold horse, I was hoping he'd got mentioned.
I have to admit, that's very unprofessional of me. I actually completely forgot about Goldie. That's so bad.
To be fair, the ruckmen are kind of like, because they're not really part of like the team.
Oh yeah,
they're just like the only person in that position, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, fair enough. Probably a bit stiff to North fans who are listening. We've just paid out on them for about 5 minutes. But they're actually a good club. We probably should be paying out in the completely crap teams, but oh well. Now next we've got the Tigers. This is our final fan submission. We've got Jack Grenda, synonymous with the Richmond Football Club. Let's see what he thought of their performances.
G'day, Mish. Thanks for having me on the show. So I'll be reviewing Richmond's season so far. It's been pretty uncharacteristic from Richmond, the performances post the bye. I think they've really struggled for cohesion in the current environment of COVID. And the lack of crowds, I reckon, are making a pretty big impact. Going in front of 60,000 every week to nothing is a fair jump. So we've had one win and 2 losses and a draw against the Pies. The losses were pretty disappointing, just the way we played. At times it looked like there was a lack of effort. Some of the ball movement was pretty shabby as well, fairly clunky going forward. And the pressure wasn't really at the level we expect that the players would expect it to bring. Obviously the Melbourne win on the weekend was a step in the right direction. Although we did lose a lot of key players, which isn't going to help going forward. But we were in this position last year, and we bounced back well. So looking at the MVP, our defence has been probably our best line across the previous 4 weeks, and I reckon that's been led by Nick Loston. He's been really, really reliable down there. He's got the job done every week. Also, Nathan Broad, he's been really good. Probably not recognised by those outside the football club, but he's been really good this year. But Boston's my MVP. So a rating out of 10, I'll probably give us a 5 out of 10. So just a pass mark. Not great, not terrible. They can definitely improve quite a lot the rest of the season. But one win, you're going to take that after the COVID crisis. So looking forward to see how we go up in the hubs and our young talent standing up.
Thanks for that one, Grenda.
How's he whipped a 5 out of 10?
No, I was just looking at him in that video. Beautiful, man. He looks like he's, maybe Swedish or something. Just those beautiful blue eyes, blonde hair. But no, thanks for that, Grenda. I've just been sent 2 strange things while we were listening to Grenda's submission. Apparently the AFL have given the green light to this new boot technology, which saw Jake King kick the Sharon 83 meters or something. So that's pretty weird. And then the England cricket team are playing an ODI the day before a test match begins, which another pretty bizarre thing. But yeah, so the Tigers. Pilch, what do you reckon of the Tigers month, mate?
Yeah, obviously I'm expecting the Tigers to really pick it up going forward despite their injuries, because that's what they've done the last few years, but absolutely nothing to be happy about really so far. I mean, they were probably unlucky not to get the chockies against the Pies. But after that, 2 horrible performances, and then they did well to get the win against Melbourne, but obviously Melbourne were rubbish. So you take that with a grain of salt. And to me, their pressure and ball movement has just been lacking, and that was their strong point over the last 3 years. And their forward line, Jack Rewalt, don't know what's up with him, but he's struggling a bit out there at the moment. So, yeah, stiff Grenda.
Look, the losses to the Hawks and the Saints, they were just clearly alphaed in those games. I use that term a lot, but it's interesting to see in games. Alfred. It's interesting to see which team does present themselves as the dominant one, whether the other team can come back or they just roll onto the back and cop it. But yeah, they obviously turning around against Melbourne. Obviously, their most recent performance was a win. Still wasn't the Richmond we all know. And those other 2 losses were definitely uncharacteristic. They weren't Richmond-like. They just Saints and Hawks just absolutely beat them with pressure and just the drive forward with the ball. And then obviously Richmond looked like they were playing their 2019 selves. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they go with the 6 main outs, and obviously moving up north. So Yeah, it's been okay. I think the given the win was the most recent performance, I think we might maybe boost my rating a little bit from what it would have been had it have been in one of the earlier rounds. But it's been obviously a bit lackluster, but they did make up for it a little bit against Melbourne.
Yeah. So Pilch, you going to match Grenda's 5 or
Uh,
going to differ from him?
Grenda would be dreaming if I was to match his 5. I mean,
They only lost 2 matches, mate.
I know, but they were shocking against the Hawks. They were just killed in the first half. To be fair, the Saints played off their heads. They put them away. Butler stuck one up them with a few snags. But yeah, I'm just based on the fact that reigning premiership favourites going into the season, I've given them a 3 out of 10 because they're so far below that at the moment.
Rowey, what about you?
Yeah, I'm going to go with a 4. Not much better. Obviously, yeah, they got absolutely killed against the Hawks. I just remember watching that first quarter. I had a fair bit of money on them.
As did I, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Just the reigning premiers, don't really expect that from them, especially because it's Richmond, and I've been very admirable of how they've played and how their play style. But to see them come out like that only a few games after their grand final, admittedly a few months after it, but still, yeah, 4 out of 10. Honestly, would have been a 3 or even lower if their win wasn't their most recent performance, because it did show signs of them coming back to their usual self. But yeah, I'm going to stick with a 4.
Yeah. So they've got the Swannies and the Kangas coming up next. So probably 2 games, especially before the season started, that they would have penciled in as wins, but never know now, especially with a lot of players not going up to the hub for them. If you had to give a best player, Rowey, who are you going?
I'm actually very glad that my decision was warranted by Grenda, a fan of Richmond. But yeah, I've gone with Nick Vlasic. He's always cool to watch. Just the way he drives the ball out of that back line and the inset marking as well that he's got. Prestia was noted, but Vlasic gets it for me.
Pilch?
Yeah, look, I agree with Rowey and Grenda. It's got to be someone out of their back line. Their midfield's just been getting put into the ground each week, and their forward line's been atrocious. Dusty Martin hasn't got going at all. But I've actually liked what Bachar Houli has shown so far. I think he was best on against the Pies. He's had a few good games, so I'll give him the chockies there. And I think he was stiff not to come away with a Norm Smith in 2017. So I'll give him the chockies.
That's just so relevant. Yeah, fair enough. He's not going up, is he?
No,
he's not. He's just had a baby, I think.
So yeah, big loss there. So now we move on. We're down to, I don't know what my brother's doing outside. I think he just came back from the park or something, but he's trying to distract me. So final 3 sides, we've got the Swannies, the Weagles, and the Doggies. No more fan submissions, so we'll just see what we're feeling about these boys. The Swannies, Pilch, you're pretty fond of the Swannies, aren't you? So, what did you think of their footy this month?
Yeah, look, I do like the Swannies. I've been have a bit of a man crush on Josh P. Kennedy over the last few years, but yeah, I don't think they were expected to do much this season. They've been stiff with Buddy being out, obviously, and losing their main tap ruckman in the big Sam Naismith. But yeah, look, I think they've been about par. They've shown glimpses, put up fights against decent sides, but what are they? 1 and 2, I'm pretty sure, 1 and 3, sorry, since returning. So yeah, about par for me on the Swannies.
Roy, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I usually see the Swannies as one of those, since obviously the grand finals, I see them as a bit of a nothing team like North, or just irrelevant. And which is why I think their last 2 weeks, they've been bad losses and they've gone a bit under the radar. Obviously, they played the underperforming Weagles and got just smacked, and then the Dogs as well. Bruce obviously just did a number on them. They've lost all their talls apart from Hayden McLean, who just quite went to primary school with. Remember he kicked 9 goals, 9 goals in a school footy match against Bowie North, I think.
9 assists for Rowie.
I remember I spent the first quarter counting because our stopwatch broke, so I had to count the quarter. So I gave him a few extra minutes so he can kick a few more. But
That is the worst gig I've ever heard.
yeah, looking back on it, it probably looks like I was not the strong point in the team. But obviously, without Buddy, their forward line isn't really firing. Obviously, Papley's a star, but apart from that, Will Hayward's still in that iffy area. Blakey, obviously, in his second year, but likes to find himself up a bit of the ground, and I don't even know who else they've got, to be honest. And yeah, Heaney and Mills, I think we're just waiting on them to really take that next step, becoming just absolute elites of the competition. Obviously, Heaney possesses that immense talent, and you often see that, but I just think they just got one or two more steps to take before they reach that elite level where they can really carry the Swans. But yeah, it's been air for me. Those last 2 weeks haven't looked promising. Two big losses.
What rating are you giving them, Rowey?
I'm going to give them a 4 out of 10. Yeah, not much else to say.
And a best player?
I
have no idea.
Probably Luke Parker. I still love what he's doing in the midfield. Him and Kennedy are often carrying the team in the midfield, just racking up 50, 60 touches between them. And I just love Parker's goal sense in the midfield. It's the way he's able to just athletically move forward and just bomb them from 45, which you often see, and turn them into goals. But yeah, Parker and a 4 out of 10 for me.
Pilch, what about you? Rating and best player?
Yeah, look, I've given them a 6 out of 10. That may be partly due to the man crush I have on the Swannies. Talk about second favourite teams, but the MVP. I'd like to give a shout out to Ollie Florent. I think he's been quite promising this year. He's starting to come along, getting a lot of touches in the midfield. But yeah, I agree with Rory. Hard to go past Luke Parker. I think he's the only remaining player to have a Supercoach ton in every round of the season so far. He's flying under the radar there. But no, he's definitely been their best player. Every touch he gets, he has an impact with it. So yeah, Luke Parker.
Fair enough. Think the Papley's been a bit dogged there, but
yeah, Papley's been good as well. But
mate, as if none of us said. Oh, I don't think any of us said, but none of us said Papley for surprise or Australian. That's I would hop on that man's bandwagon any day of the week. Now on to a bit of they're probably similar level, the Swans, in terms of this month, but onto the Eagles. They had high expectations. I don't know exactly where I predicted them to come, but it was definitely in the top 3. They've gone 1 and 3. They got pumped by the Suns, pumped by the Lions, pumped by Port, and then pumped Swans. So a lot of pumping is basically the way I describe their month. Pilch, what are your thoughts on the Eagles month, mate?
Yeah, well, obviously it's been subpar. I mean, we all know they're home track bullies. They love playing over in Perth, which they haven't been able to do due to the hub. But to be fair to them, they have played some good teams. I mean, they were whacked by Brisbane and the Power, but they've probably been the best 2 teams in the comp. So I mean, not too worried there. And then they did rebound this week with a tidy win over the Swannies, and it would not surprise me if they push for the top 4 this season, especially with the big stretch in Perth coming up. But yeah,
Rowey?
Yeah, obviously got smashed in those 3 weeks in a row, and then obviously just tore apart the Swans. They've lost confidence in their play style, and there's a big example of that. I think it was when they played Port. It was a clip of play where it had 3 of their players. It was Elliot Yeo was one, maybe Tim Kelly the other, and someone else. But they've just the lack of running that they displayed in that game, and Port just ran them off their legs. And you see in the week after, you see Elliot Yeo breaking away from the midfield. So I think there was a big change. Once they came out of those few weeks, they really thought, we've got to do something about this. They've got a premiership-winning team. We saw that in 2018, and a premiership-winning midfield. That just has been underperforming so far. Obviously, got tore apart by a second game at Row. But they have turned it around, I think, in that Swans game. And obviously, the big stretch in Western Australia later in the season. But yeah, it obviously hasn't been great. It's a great start, but like Richmond, I think their most recent win does show a bit of promise. I think it was hard fought by them. I think they will obviously bounce back. Their list is too good to suffer. like they have been the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, so this weekend they play Adelaide in Brisbane, and then they go back home and they play. What is is it called the Western Derby? Is that what it's called? I don't know.
Yes.
The West, yeah, I don't know. Just they
Derby.
Fremantle. And then so they're two matches they should win. No doubt about that. They'll go into those as heavy favourites, and then all of a sudden they're 4-3 with the stretch of home games to come. So, despite having a pretty shocking month, it's probably not looking too bad in the grand scheme of things for West Coast. How low are these ratings going to be, Pilch?
Yeah, well, I've looked at what I've written down here, and I've written down a 5 out of 10, but I'm changing that down to a 4, because I mean they've played good sides, but they were pumped, and I think the shorter quarters is probably not helping them out of all the teams in the comp the most because of their possession, kick and mark play style. They tend to try and tire teams out in the longer format, so not helped there. So yeah, I'll go 4 out of 10.
Rowey, what about you?
I'm going to go lower, but with an asterisk. I'm going to go 3 out of 10. But I definitely expect that to improve, especially in the coming weeks. Obviously, 2 really winnable games and the stretch in Perth. At the moment, I think a 3 out of 10 is fair. I know they're obviously played some quality sides, but as a premiership winning team in 2018, and with the list they've got one of the best midfields in the comp, and I've also got an elite defence. I think it's very underrated. You can't be getting dominated like that in games, and just the lack of effort is not acceptable. I think a 3 out of 10 is fair, but I think it is definitely going to improve in the coming weeks.
Yeah. So, although not a great month for the Weagles, I don't think it's disastrous for them. I think their season hopes are still certainly alive and definitely a chance at the premiership, although albeit a slow start. Final side, we've got the
MVP, mate.
MVP, mate. I've been waiting on this, man.
Who are you
we might have the same man here, Rowie.
All right, 3. Wait, go on. Well, after one. 3,
I actually don't know if it will, but he's in
2,
my fantasy super.
1.
Brad Shepherd.
Gaff. Brad Shepherd.
Well, that is
the way Rowie was talking, I thought he'd gone a Smoky.
That was ambitious.
Fair enough.
You Pilch thinking Rowey was going to go Shepherd. I don't think.
But yeah, I think I've snubbed Gaff a bit here because he's got one of the best work rates in the comp. He's been racking them up, and he's definitely been one of their best players. Shout out to Nat Nui as well. I think he's a huge reason why their midfield's considered one of the best, because he just gives them first use at pretty much every stoppage. Although, what else does he bring to the table apart from being a great tap ruckman? But yeah, for me, Brad Shepherd's been by far their best defender, and he's been consistent this year. Against the Power, he was by far their best player. And yeah, he's racking in like 13 marks, locking down whoever he's playing on. So yeah, I'm going to go Brad Shepherd.
Once again, Pilch, I don't reckon many people know what you're talking about there. But
with what?
Rowey? The BBC. That's what he was talking about.
All right, let's move on quickly from that. No, I've got Gaff. I think the lack of effort from their midfield in previous weeks. I think obviously Shuey was carrying a bit of an injury. Yo was underperforming. Kelly's, I think it's fair to say, underperforming at the new club. Gaff just sort of carrying the midfield, especially in the hard losses. He features in both of my Supercoach fans teams, so he's been good for me so far. He's been consistent, so I've got to go Gaffy. And yeah, obviously Brad Shepherd's an honourable mention though. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, shout out to Andrew Gaffney having a pretty good right hook on him. Now moving on to the Western Bulldogs. Should have been suspended for life.
For a second, I thought you were talking about the umpire.
Oh, umpire Chris Gaffney.
Yeah.
All right. Now, finally, we've got the Doggies. To be fair, I know it's early, but a lot of the teams have had up and down months, and it's fair to say the Doggies fit that bill once again. Rowey, what have you made of their footy?
Yeah, since round 2 when they got beaten by the Saints, they have flown under the radar a bit. I think that loss, everyone just thought, okay, it's going to be another hangover season for the Dogs since their premiership, but they've flown under the radar. 3 big wins against the Giants, Swans and North. obviously Bruce showed that what he's capable of on the weekend. Obviously, he was underperforming a bit, maybe because he was playing second fiddle to Norton. Likes to be that main tall forward as he did at the Saints. And what you notice a lot with Dogs, they've always got plenty of options for goals. You see a lot of their players, not just their forward line, chipping in for 1 or 2 goals, which if you're talking about the Swans, might be a bit of an issue because like their forward line doesn't perform, and then you don't see many other goal kickers. It's usually just Papley and all them. But the Dogs do have a lot of those sort of ranging halfbacks and midfielders that do often chip in, and you've seen that recently in the past 3 weeks. But yeah, round 2 they were outplayed, but it was round 2. It was about a month ago now. So I think they've been good. They've flown under the radar a bit. So it's been good from the Dogs since.
Pilch, what about you, mate?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, they were sitting, I think they were last with a percentage of about 43 after they were whacked by the Saints. But yeah, since then they've been, you can't really fault them. I mean, they put away the Giants, which was really good to see, and that's despite a couple of key injuries to Aaron Norton and the contested handball specialist Josh Dunkley, which destroyed my Supercoach team. So I'm filthy about that. But yes, yeah. So the last 3 weeks they've been real good. So I'm expecting them to push for definitely well into the top 8 this year.
Yeah, promising last 3 weeks for the Doggies. I don't know who you're going to go for the MVP, but Baz Lenka, he is a serious footy player.
Yeah,
I know most of the attention he cops is because like his hair and stuff like that, and being a good-looking bloke, but he knows how to find it and he knows how to use it. But Rowey, who are you going for best player, and what are you rating the Doggies month?
I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10. I think they've been good. I just think that loss to Saints was, I reckon some of those losses might show up a couple of times in the rest of the season. I hope they prove me wrong because I do like the Dogs. I'm not going to give it to Baz Lenka because I tackled him for holding the ball in year 8, and I'm never, ever going to acknowledge him as a good player since. Because I was a stick back then, and that should never have happened. So I'm going to give it to consistent performance. He's been shocking for me in Supercoach, but still, I didn't know who to pick for the Dogs. I'm going to go Jack McRae just because he's always consistent, racks up a lot, but he doesn't do a lot with it. But yeah, he always looks composed with the ball. Bont had that one awesome game against the Swans, but apart from that, hasn't done much. I think he's copped a bit of attention, obviously, mainly in the Giants game, but I'll give it to McRae. Just because I always love watching McRae play. He's always composed, and he's the type of player that a team like Melbourne needs in the midfield. And yeah.
Yeah, agree with the Bonts only had one good game. McRae's been consistent, but probably underwhelming to his normal standards. So, and then Baz Lenka's concussion has probably snubbed him here. But I've actually gone with big Tim English, although he doesn't give them first use very often. Their elite midfield group has to normally shark the taps. But he's been racking up. He's been having a huge impact. He's been an absolute star so far. I think he had 25 disposals against the Swannies, taking intercept marks. Good kick on him as well. And I think he'll definitely be a star in a few years' time. A bit like Big Maxi Gawn, although not as tall. But yeah, Tim English. Caleb Daniels been good as well. So shout out to him. But yeah, I do like my ruckman.
All right, fair enough. Also, I don't know what you guys think about this. I watched them a couple times this month. I actually thought Ed Richards had bounced back a bit. I thought he was very underwhelming last year after a good first year. But I have to say, I'm looking at the stats now. It doesn't really look like that narrative is correct, but who knows? But yeah, I've got to stick up for my fellow Rangers.
He looks a lot like you on the field, mate.
He's very noticeable out there on the park.
A classy AFL footballer, is that what you're saying, Roy?
Yeah, exactly. I
don't know if that's what
dashing down the wings, the penetrating kicks, and the red hair.
That's what I might look like in the third side, but yeah. So that's all 18 teams done and dusted. We got there. Combined, I think it took us almost 2 hours, but we've done it. So well done, lads. Any plans coming up for getting back into the swing of lockdown?
Oh, mate. I'm eyeing off Saturday. Saturday footy starts 12:30, ends late night.
Why does it start at 12:30?
I don't know. Saints Freo is on at 12:35, and there's just non-stop footy till the end, till that night. So that's going to be a day on the couch. 100%.
Yeah,
So basically, there's no double ups that day. That's all it.
Yeah.
Except for like an hour. Yeah.
yeah.
Pilch, anything to say, mate?
Footy's about the only thing we've got going on at the moment. So yeah, I'll be watching every game, despite my Supercoach team being ranked about 60,000th in the world at the moment. But no, I love the footy, so that'll be stopping me from being full depresso during lockdown, I reckon.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Looking forward to this month of footy. Also looking forward to the return of Test cricket tonight.
Oh,
That
yeah.
sounds like I'm doing a sponsorship for cricket or anything, but not quite at that level at this podcast yet. We're not getting sponsored by Test cricket as a sport. But yeah, it starts in 2 hours, so I'm very keen for that. Hoping,
Beautiful.
I don't know who I want to bat first. I want West Indies to bat first. Jimmy takes
West Indies to bat, yeah.
Jimmy takes 6 on the first
So
session.
Jimmy Hoop a few.
Sibley batting by session 2. That was really nice to see. But I think either way, no matter who bats, there's going to be like 5 wickets in the first session, so it will be entertaining.
I reckon there'll be a few brown stains on the West Indies top orders whites when Jofra Archer comes on to bowl, I reckon.
Yes. If there's ever a time to watch Test cricket between England and West Indies, it is tonight. The return.
Dead set. Hopefully it's a green team, everything. Hopefully it's just chaos. Hopefully we've got big Chris Gaffney umpiring, just triggering blokes. Yeah. Looking forward to that. If you are listening to this on Thursday and Friday, it's probably day 2 or day 3. But
game's probably over.
Yeah, day 3, the game probably will be over. Day 2, you might be able to catch the last innings or something. So yeah. Once again, thanks for joining me, lads. As always, thank you to the people who sent in their little videos for me. And yeah, thanks for listening.
Thanks, Hammer. Been a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, mate.